Welcome everybody to SaaS on the Street. We are live in our new studio format. First actual live interview in our studio. So thanks. Welcome along, Jason Ennor. Thanks for being
Simon.
here.
Yeah, cheers. Good to be here.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you here. And Jason's been a kind of an HR expert for about 15 years, and then he's turned his hand to building a groundbreaking SaaS business. And I guess the first question I have for you, Jason, is what was that moment when you just went, I'm not going to do the corporate thing anymore, and there's got to be a better way to do this, and how am I going to tackle HR kind of on demand in a SaaS model?
Yeah. Well, my boss at Woolworths Australia at the time thought it was a midlife crisis.
Right.
Genuinely offered me counselling to his career. Absolutely good guy. This is a true story.
Really?
Yeah. I tendered my resignation. I got home. Home was about 20 minutes from the office, and I got a phone call from his PA, and I had her number on. I said, "Hey, Esther, what's going on?" She said, "Listen, can you come back? David wants to meet you." I mean, I've just got home. And, one thing for anyone in a corporate, the people you most trust are PAs. Get on side with the PAs, and the world just opens.
Yeah, that's true.
You get meetings, you get whatever you need, and you trust them. And I said, "You tell me, should I come back?" She said, "I think you should." So I turned around and came back, and there's my boss, right? The director of HR at the time. Really good guy. And he said, "Look, Jason," and he was a bit flustered, but he basically offered me EAP, and he thought, "What are you doing?" I at that time was 39 years old. I had 3 young children.
So what's EAP?
Employee Assistance Program, counselling. Right. Counselling for clearly some sort of madness that had come over me.
Yeah, entrepreneurial madness.
Right. And he said, "Look, I think you need to talk to somebody." He was really concerned for me.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was crazy. I had a great job.
Is that because you told him what you were planning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was really transparent about it. I was really open and honest about what I was doing.
Right.
I'd not long before received a promotion. I was head of HR for the second largest commercial division of the Woolworths Group. That was the Caltex Woolworths JV. It was about a $6.4 billion business at that time.
How many people does that mean you're kind of
responsible for there? There was around 9,000, I think.
Right.
I'd come out of a supermarkets role where I was with a team of people looking after around 135,000 employees.
Wow.
So it was a big role, operationally significant, and I just quit. So maybe the epiphany was a midlife crisis. But what had happened, Simon, is there was a sort of combination of a number of things. I had spent 15 years or thereabouts in corporate. I'd received the promotion, and it felt like the head of HR job at Dick Smith in New Zealand 4 years before. I thought, heck, this is my first corporate repeat. And I looked around and I saw dudes in their sort of 50s and 60s who were on their 10th or 11th corporate repeat, and they were not happy, and they were unhealthy individuals. They were kind of tied by golden handcuffs. They were doing a version of a job they'd already done 100 times before, and I thought, heck, that's not me. And while I was earning well, I wasn't earning so well that it was impossible to walk out. So I had this kind of, I guess, restlessness around my career and what I was doing. My family weren't really enjoying Sydney, so then I had this personal kind of pressure to go, do we really want to stay here, Dad? It's not really kind of, a place we're enjoying. And then my business partner and co-founder and I had the MyHR idea. And I thought, I cannot die having not given this a crack.
Right.
And so those three things collided all at once, and it was like, there it is, I got to do this. So I walked out on money, came back, we had no customers, no revenue, half-built software, I had 3 young children, had a mortgage to service, and we started MyHR in February of 2013.
And you were how old at that stage?
39 years old, yeah.
39, yeah.
So I guess old for a founder in terms of SaaS, but I felt like I still had a lot of life in front of me, so yeah.
It's interesting. I have a friend in the UK, and he was out here, and we were having a chat. And as he relayed all these different people he knew, he's like, yeah, everyone I know in my 40s and 50s in the UK is out of work, like trying to get into the system. So do you think there's a kind of a, if you look back on that old self, and if you had decided that you weren't going to do MyHR and you'd sat there and it hadn't really actually germinated and taken shape, do you ever look back on that and just sort of think you're lucky stars that you took the road?
Yeah, that I wasn't sort of just part of that corporate treadmill, or then running the risk of then being on the redundancy bandwagon come COVID and not being able to get back in the market as an older guy.
All of it, getting stale, I guess.
Yeah, totally, mate. I would not change this for anything.
Yeah.
And again, my boss at the time, they were fantastic. He offered me 3 months full pay. no obligation.
Wow.
And he said, we will pay you for 3 months, at the end of which you can come back. And I said,
if you fail,
and I said, mate, if I'm only giving this 3 months, I might as well not bother. And my integrity does not allow me to take what is effectively 3 months of free money. And I turned it down, which sounds crazy.
You turned it down. You don't want the guilt.
I said, no, I'm not taking it.
Really?
I said, if I don't give this at least a year and then really 5 years, I shouldn't bother. So thanks, appreciate it, and credit to you. And so, I don't have a bad word to say about them. They're a massive corporate and whatever, but they really tried to look after me.
So I place a big emphasis. My business partner Gerald asks this of some of the people that I work with. Like, what was the original intent? Because a lot of the essence of a SaaS business comes down to that original intent. So what was your original intent for MyHR?
This is gonna sound a bit cheesy and contrived because it's become our tagline and it's one of our values, but it's there because this is where it started.
Yeah.
So genuinely I say this, and this is not scripted at their audience.
Yeah.
It was to make it easy, make HR easy. So the genesis of the idea came from my business partner who was running a small business, giving me a call and saying, Jason, I got this issue. I need to make a person redundant. We're a small design agency, lost a big account. It's about as straightforward as a redundancy gets, clear commercial justification. No bad blood between the individuals. He just couldn't afford to pay her anymore.
Right.
I was in the middle of a big union negotiation. I said, mate, I don't know if I can really help you at this time. I said, go and get a quote and let me know. And the consultant quoted him $5,000. I went, okay, hang on a second. Something's not right here.
Right.
Excuse me. And I said, okay, dude, look, in adjournments between this big negotiation, I typed him up some little scripts. I said, go into a meeting and say this, then copy this email script into a letter and give that to her. She'll come back in 2 days with a representative and say these things.
Right.
Because how do you know that? And I said, watch.
Yeah.
And she did.
It's like clockwork.
Yeah, she came back with her dad, and he was just wanted to make sure his daughter was being looked after and not shafted, but there was no animosity, but they were intent on a fair process.
Yeah.
He catalogued the response. He emailed it to me. I wrote another email, said, say this, give her this letter, and the redundancy's confirmed. It was like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
How did you do that? I said, that's what we do internally. In a large corporate machine like Woolworths, where you got over 200,000 people right across Australia and New Zealand, you operate central hubs of HR and you have to be quick. And what I realized is in the world of small and medium business, no one was doing this in a way that was easy. It was opaque. It was scary. It was expensive. We wanted it to be transparent and easy and cost effective.
So at the risk of being an advertisement for MyHR.
Yeah, dude, sorry.
So I'm going to ask you killer questions later, but would you say that it's a bit of an insurance policy if you're running a team of between like 5 and 50 people, having MyHR is kind of a little bit like an insurance policy. If you get in the shit and you've got some real substance that can act quickly and efficiently and sort of proactively on your behalf. Is it
to a point? So I'd say firstly 5 to 500. So we'd extend beyond 50. We've got to really north of 100. We have a lot of business, so it covers quite a range in terms of size. That insurance policy element is definitely part of it in the way that any good HR support is, because issues will arise and you need to call on expertise. But actually, I think the real value is having us there the whole time, which is why the subscription model and the software makes this work.
Yeah.
We're not just this call center of people you ring like you do when you make the insurance claim.
right?
We don't want to be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. So
Right.
we want you to phone us and go, look, this guy Simon, I don't know what's going on here, but something's not right.
He's
so we're
asking too much
saying,
money.
yeah, so we say, have that conversation now. What we don't want to do is wait for 6 months' time where the employer's built up all this animosity and just goes, I've had enough of this guy.
Yeah.
I got to do something. And it becomes an argument. And that's often the case with the lawyer or consultancy model. You wait till there's a dispute, you engage the expensive hourly people.
Mm.
We want you to engage early. And sometimes issues that you think are serious are not. You have a simple conversation, you resolve it, and it moves on. And you go, heck, I'm glad I did that. My assumption was something really bad was happening. The reality was quite different. We kind of roll. So insurance policy is part of it. Our clients know they've got us if things blow up, and then they do. But actually, it's more, I think, about this ongoing engagement and the ability to catch issues when they're little.
So how do you describe the business to somebody? Or how do you think of the business?
Yeah, we describe it essentially as it's an HR partner to you. We're your outsourced HR department. So we don't describe it exclusively as software. It's this beautiful kind of hybrid between software and human support. And that creates this outsourced HR department that services you and partners with your business.
Right. Okay. And how do you manage different demands for HR expertise?
Yep.
How do you manage the peaks and
troughs? We structure our team in 3 categories. There's the implementation team. So they bring people onto MyHR and get them set up with our systems, our recommendations. We review all their existing documents. It's one of these to-do list items that most businesses have, even corporates. We've got to review our policy suite. We've got to review our job descriptions. They're all sort of over 10 years old and you never quite get around to it. So implementation take care of that. So we call that your health check. So that's the first bit about getting you kind of up to speed. Then day to day, we have administrators, advisors, and business partners. So the level of HR requirement goes to the relevant individual in terms of their training, qualification, and experience.
Right.
In the way we manage the peaks and troughs, we're a systems and processes business, right? Fundamentally. And so we know how many we look after nearly 20,000 employees at the moment. And we do that with about 20 HR people.
Right.
So actually a bit less. So our ratio is 1 HR person to every 1,500 employees, which is about 10 times better than market average.
Wow.
And it's normally kind of 1 HR to 100 or 150 people. And what we know is for those 20,000 people we look after, some clients will be all on at the same time as others are not. And there are peaks and troughs of individual client need that just smooths out into a regular and steady work pattern.
Right.
So we plan to that. So I've had investors previously say to me, well, what happens if everybody in all of your clients decides to steal tomorrow and they all need to sack someone? And we say, well, that doesn't happen.
Right.
That argument would apply equally to Air New Zealand or the Warehouse Group or Spark, any big employer.
What if everyone
turned up to work tomorrow and decided to kind of steal? Their HR teams aren't equipped to deal with that.
Right.
But the reality is that doesn't happen. That's a crazy idea.
Right.
Except
it's a crazy question from a crazy investor.
Yeah, right. Except to the credit to those crazy people in March 2020, when we got an announcement about a level 4 lockdown, and every single client in MyHR at the same moment had a total freak out and needed to make every single person in their business redundant. At least that's what they thought.
Right.
And it just, at the same time as our entire workforce, the MyHR workforce, dispersed to work from home. It was crazy. So here is this thing that we said would never happen. And it happened like that.
Black swan event.
Right. And then we had the wage subsidy announced. And so suddenly there's this panic of, well, I have to lay off all my team because I don't have any work in the pipeline from this is every client in every industry, back to, we're getting a wage subsidy. Maybe we're okay. The first wave of the sub only covered you up to a certain amount. I think it was capped at, was it 50 or 500K? I can't remember. Such a blur. But that actually wasn't enough for some clients whose weekly payroll is $1 million. It's kind of like, this isn't going to cover us for any length of time.
Yes.
And then they go back to panic mode, and then the subsidy cap gets removed. And so then they move from kind of panic mode into, that's the printer out there, I think. They move from panic mode into kind of maintenance mode. So all this consultation around reduction of hours and those sorts of things. So
what did you do that day,
mate?
How did you triage?
Yeah. So we lived by 2 daily Zoom calls. So at first I pulled all my team together, and the way we basically restructured the way all work came in and the way that was divvied out. I got back on the tools, and every day, morning and afternoon, we had a full team Zoom. We collected all the info from the 1 p.m. update. So whatever came out of that, we could then roll that into what we're doing for clients. And we divided up the work. So the advisory work went through the roof, but correspondingly, the admin work dropped away. We weren't writing employment agreements for people because no one was hiring. We weren't doing recruitment. So to give you some example statistics, we went from 350 employment agreements per week on average to 12 during those COVID months. And those 12 were people who were offered new roles in a restructured organization. We went from 54 recruitment requests a week to 0. Went from 40 hours of phone calls to none for admin support and to 120 or more for advisory support. So what we could do is deploy the admin team to basically provide support to the advisors who were just on calls and on the chat portal dealing with the tricky issues, and feeding out the admin tasks to do them. And then I was able to oversee that admin work to make sure that the letters that were going out were okay. So we
did you feel like you the people had enough understanding that you were stretched as well, or did you feel like you could have done better to keep clients?
People were understanding, but they were stressed. So I was most concerned about my team because they were dealing with business owners in tears.
Yeah.
And some of my team are 23-year-old HR grads.
Right.
Ringing me going, I've just had a 50-year-old man who's running a $10 million business in tears on the phone. What do I do? How do I handle this? You know? So I was doing a lot of contact around that sort of stuff. But fundamentally, we came out without dropping the ball. And I can't actually advertise this, but I think I can say it. We had 4 MSD audits, and they, every single one of them, by we, I mean clients of ours who were audited by MSD, because employees had raised complaints about how the wage subsidy was divvied out.
Oh, I see.
And we smashed them all. And in one of them,
and part of that was the systems and processes where it was robust.
That's
it wasn't
versus the employers who were making the news because they had done something wrong, reduced hours, forced people to take leave without consultation, that kind of thing. One auditor said, looks like MyHR knows the law better than we do. I can't say who there was, or can either confirm or deny, but that was the feedback from one of the auditors. So it was a really proud moment, and it was that I could use that to rally my team in what was an incredibly difficult time for them as well.
It's interesting. We're chuckling away about a HR SaaS business, but I mean, the reality is you're dealing with the pointy end of people losing jobs and just the tough part of employment.
Mm-hmm.
So you must have a pretty ninja team now who've been like tested thoroughly and come out in good shape.
Yeah. So one of our identified challenges, and I knew this early, and we've hit that point, is keeping my talent, because what I'm growing is some of the best HR people in the country.
Right.
And I don't say that, I'm not spinning any marketing line there. That's just a fact. The volume of the issues, the diversity of issues that they deal with and the way they deal with it, and their caliber and their quality is phenomenal. So they are most at risk. So the way I handle that is there is a complete open door, and I encourage people, if they want to leave, but I want them to talk to me about it.
Right.
And what I offer is something as an alternative to a job in a corporate HR department. But if you want to go and try that, you take it. If you don't like it, you come back.
Oh, really? Oh, an open door if they leave.
Both ways.
Oh, yeah, I did that recently.
And people don't leave, they stick with us. And those that do come back, we've got quite an interesting return stat. And so I'm really transparent. And I'll sit down.
So people go off and go, oh, this MyHR is not doing it for me. I'm going to go and do some corporate job, and then they'll come back.
I want to own they deal with thousands of different managers and businesses. And so sometimes what we lack is that ability to kind of get involved in a company's people strategy end to end. But what they realize when they get into that is it's not maybe quite what it's cut out to be, and what you get at MyHR is something that's more compelling. It's also a wicked place to work. We put a lot of effort into it being a really cool place to work, we have a lot of fun, we do a lot of cool things, there's a lot of recognition. Our vibe is really, really important to us.
So you talked a little bit about that, sort of jumping out of Woolworths, and in our promo a couple of days ago you said, you had this 15-year plan, and you're into year 8. So your first 5 years of sort of establishment, how did that go?
Not at all like we thought it would, which I think is what every sort of startup founder would say.
Why doesn't the market love us as much as
I know, man. We saw this. Some of those early forecasts, they're just a bit embarrassing. I think I've chucked those spreadsheets away.
No, don't chuck them away.
But it
hit the numbers eventually.
Yeah, we do, right? Totally. It was, we learned a lot about our assumptions and what the market really needs, how easy it was to sell. So especially when you're on the inside, we look at it and go, this is a no-brainer. Why doesn't every business in the country have MyHR? I mean, it's ridiculous. The cost for what you get and the level of customization, our track record, but that's, we're biased. It's like asking about your own kids, So what we learned was this is a massive trust purchase. So our sale cycle is longer than we thought. you've really got to demonstrate to people that you can be trusted to handle this stuff, because it's such an area of sensitivity and concern.
Yes.
So the core of our offers never changed. So all the little pivots we've had have always been around this hybrid model, software and human support. And the software is really, it's the kind of gold in this. So, often our conversations center around our people because they are so critical to that front line. This whole chat we've just had about COVID and my team at home delivering support. None of that is possible at that scale without the software we built.
Right.
But it's this, I don't know if you're into music, it's kind of like a bass guitarist, right? It's just this kind of, if it's not there, you notice.
The people,
when it's there,
the people or the
music,
software?
The software. The software is this kind of silent thing. Because people talk about the humans. Oh yeah, I run my HR and I talk to Jason, I talk to Emma, I got this support. The team are there helping me through the COVID time.
Right.
They cannot do that at that scale without the software, without the automation that we've built, without the innovations we've factored into the way we feed requests in. We render documents, we provide HR and employment law support. All of these things are built into our systems and processes, and the software drives them. But we end up always talking about our humans.
Right.
Because people love dealing with humans.
It's happened. Christopher is mucking about with my screen. Oh no.
You've been hacked.
I've been hacked. Okay, I'll try and fix that screen. So the software that's bugging me, I gotta fix it. The software that you the software platform that you've built, because we're touching on this before you had this conversation about you think of yourself as SaaS.
Yep.
So what do people say to you about having all these humans in the loop in relation to your software licensing model and your SaaS metrics?
Yeah. So it depends who you're asking. So if you're asking a potential investor or a software as a service expert, they will say, what are you doing? Get rid of the humans, just build your software. You cannot scale a model that has service attached to it. So, there's that. There are people who are maybe not SaaS experts who see the value of that human connection. And our price point is slightly higher than traditional SaaS to factor that in. So we might not scale logos as quickly as traditional SaaS, but we can scale revenue as quickly.
Yeah.
Because what we've identified is if you're engaging, say, consultancy services, or in-house HR, you might be spending $100,000 a year. We will deliver the equivalent for about $20,000 a year.
Right.
And off-the-shelf HR software, you probably get for $2,000 a year.
Right.
But you're not getting any support with it.
Right.
So the pure SaaS HR software has to scale logos 10 times our rate to achieve the same revenue outcome.
Yes.
But we can achieve that revenue outcome per logo, but we deliver something that's the equivalent of $100,000 set of services.
How much of what you've baked into MyHR has come from the scaling that you had to do to manage 9,000 people at Woolworths or BP or
and initially all of it, because that was my paradigm. I'd come from this world where we lived at the pointy end of HR. It was issues rich. It was high volume. You were dealing with a lot of it wasn't corporate HR where you're kind of struggling to fill your day, to be honest. This was full on, and we had to have systems and processes in place. So it was the basis of MyHR was kind of a retail HR model, hub and spoke kind of service.
Right.
But within a year or two of operating, so in these first 5 years that you're talking about, what we realized is, of course, which sounds obvious, but unlike Woolworths or Shell, we're not dealing with one company. We're dealing with 1,000 individual companies. So it's not quite the same as being in-house. So
yes.
Volume-wise, there's a lot that I fall back on in terms of my experience, but we're breaking new ground really in terms of volume. Like, we consider ourselves now to be the second largest private sector HR team in the country because we've got 20,000 people.
Right.
Progressive Enterprises employ about 19.5. The Warehouse Group employ 23.
Oh, I see.
Once we clear 23,000, we will be the largest sort of HR team in terms of private sector employment, in terms of counting the number of humans that we're responsible for in the Kiwi workforce.
But isn't JP Morgan at like 150,000 or something?
Globally.
Yeah. So the total number of the largest employer in the world is what, a couple of 100,000?
maybe more.
Maybe
West
more?
Australia has a couple 100,000. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I can't remember. I mean, I don't know now. In the old days, the oil companies were scaled back a bit, especially Shell divesting all of their retail operations. They sort of got down, I think, maybe even as low as 60,000 or so.
But it's not inconceivable that you can become potentially the biggest employer in the world.
Oh, no, totally. Like I'm targeting 100,000 employees in the system as part of the horizon that I can see.
Yeah.
So by that I mean in the next 5 years.
And that's the mid part of your plan.
And then from 100, I'd like to get to 500,000. Imagine hitting 1 million. That would be pretty cool. I haven't forecast that yet. So that's just a dream. But yeah, 100,000 is planned for, forecast. 500,000 is part of that kind of next play, and 1 million would just be a dream.
See, my days at Diligent, one of the kind of golden rules was just on the customer success side. Nothing was an issue. Like nothing was. It was a concierge level account management back then.
Yep.
And if a director was stuck in Hong Kong, couldn't get on Wi-Fi, that was our problem. That was our problem, to go and find someone at the hotel who could sort out the director's laptop Wi-Fi issue.
Yeah, right.
Because that meant getting onto the board papers. That meant a successful board meeting. That meant not throwing an electronic board portal system out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everybody, and we'd train everybody with a 15-minute training session, because we didn't want them all turning up at the first meeting where they're supposed to get their board papers, and one person couldn't log in, and that's the person who throws their toys out of the pram, and that's the reason the whole thing gets canned.
Yeah.
So that's that whole kind of velvet glove kind of 5-star hotel concierge idea. But really, isn't what you're doing just a version of that, and that customer success just means something, just your customer success just is like all of these services, and that would be my answer on the SaaS versus where you got these HR people. It's all it is like this incredible ninja customer success team.
Yeah, it's a really good way of thinking about it. If you think of, say, HubSpot, who are enormous globally, SaaS business, they have a massive team, and a lot of that team is dedicated to account management and customer success. And their net new revenue numbers based on the upsell that they do, how many more seats you add, how many more modules you unlock. You're quite right. There is a people component to traditional SaaS that's often kind of ignored.
Yeah, and it's the key to it all working.
It is.
That's why people love it.
Yeah.
It's not, most of the time, it's not just the software.
No.
It's everything that gets resolved in the process of using the software.
I think in a B2B space, I think we carry people, as do Xero, as does HubSpot. We frame it as it's part of the service as opposed to that customer success. But I think you're right. B2C is a little different. You can be Airbnb or Uber, and you don't expect to pick up the phone and speak to anyone at Airbnb. You just want to book a batch and Arrowtown and stay the weekend and have some fun, So, but B2B, there is absolutely this need and desire from your customers to get in touch and talk about issues and have them resolved. And so I don't see it as a crazy model, our human and software hybrid. And I think people who experience it get it for sure.
And have you looked at any other kind of profession and gone, oh, well, that's like that, we're doing that for HR? Or do you feel like you're kind of pioneering in that regard?
I feel like we're pioneering, but that can sound a bit naive. Everyone feels like they're pioneering, I think we didn't model it on anything externally we had seen. I guess if I look back over it, it's probably not dissimilar to the old, say, payroll bureaus, which is interesting because this is quite old-fashioned. Back before cloud software, you'd install your version of Comac or whatever old payroll system there was on your company mainframe, and you had a payroll team in Wellington or Palmy or wherever who ran your pay, and they weren't part of your business, but they were trusted. You could call them, they would help out. That's a retro model, so we're not dissimilar to that in some respects, but those old models came with this kind of really complex charging structures and annual licensing and kind of enterprise-based fee. We charge like SaaS. There's a fixed monthly fee. no lock-in contract, and it's all you can eat. You ring our team 100 times in a day, you're not getting charged anymore. You do 20 disciplinaries in a week, we're not going to charge you anymore. But we will ask you, are you sure you're on the right track? Because if you're running that many disciplinaries, there's some stuff going on in your business that, that you might need to look at. So we do try to add value, but we don't restrict our clients in terms of number of contacts they make and number of documents, support calls we take.
Yeah, and I guess that's why it's popular, and the word of mouth is strong.
Yeah, very strong. We get a lot of business, and even now, so we've just unhibernated. Is that even a word? The Australia business. So we launched the week before lockdown. Fortunately, had not quite signed the lease, and we had an agreement in principle, but we hadn't gone and we hadn't relocated team. And so we were able to just put everything on hold and pull back and see out the lockdown year.
Right.
We just kicked off again as of a few weeks ago, and I have my first Aussie hire, a BDM, arriving on Monday for induction in New Zealand, and then we're going over there the week after to hire some HR people, set up our HQ in Sydney, and kick this thing off.
Great.
Yeah, super exciting, right? So pulling that out of hibernation, I mean, I've been so impatient to get it going. I've lost track of what your original question was. Sorry, just getting the Aussie buzz is
Well, let's talk about territory. Really so New Zealand's been the main territory, and now this Australian is resuming.
Yep.
And will you stay in those two markets for quite a while?
We will initially. The two of the things that we get pressure about. One is this hybrid model, when people say, "Why have you got humans? Just focus on software." And I believe we've proven that you can work and scale with that. The other one is, how do you scale internationally? You're dealing with different laws. This is crazy. So we know we can do it. We need to prove it. And I use the Airbnb example. They're not dealing with different international laws. They're dealing with individual council bylaws, and yet somehow they managed to pull it off, right?
Right.
And as long as we are operating in common law countries, which is the markets you want to be in anyway, OECD, sort of, New Zealand, Australia, then Singapore, we think Canada, the UK, Ireland, then parts of Europe. We're intentionally not thinking about the USA just because it's legally kind of complex and a really fragmented HR landscape.
Right.
But all of these countries, the same process applies. If I want to hire you, I have to give you a piece of paper that outlines the terms. You accept that through some form of acceptance, signing, confirmation, whatever. We're now engaged in an employment relationship bound by a contract. You can get some holidays and some benefits. If you need to leave,
I'm getting employed.
Yeah. If you want to leave, you have to do some things to tell me, or if I want to get rid of you, I have to do some things to get rid of you. And, but the structure is the same, which means the software applies in all of those places.
Okay.
How I do that in Singapore versus how I do that in New South Wales versus Western Australia versus New Zealand might differ slightly, but that is content in a document. That's not the document framework itself. So scaling internationally is really easy. It's actually more complex. The difference between, say, hiring an individual in New Zealand who works in an environment at heights and has a whole bunch of safety requirements for that versus someone, say, in a pharmaceutical research company and all the IP protection and other sorts of clauses they need. The differences in those agreements are significant.
A massive,
And we deliver that to our clients. That's part of it. You don't just get this off-the-shelf template.
So you've also been building in the first phase all of the configuration around industries, because you've been industry agnostic, and so you've had to get all of that groundwork done.
We have this amazing database of job descriptions, policies, clauses, employment agreement clauses, backed now by history, supported by case law, live in market.
What's that? Awesome. Was that head splitting for a while, or did you just know all that was coming anyway and you just added it all up?
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I dig it. I think it's kind of cool. Like
you get into it and you're like, this is a competitive advantage. Let's nail it really well.
100%.
Right. And let's figure out how the system can pull an industry and like someone who's working on a crane or working in treetops.
And there is a trick, which I don't know if I should share, but maybe I will. So at the risk of giving away our competitive advantage and upsetting our clients, the trick is...
This is good.
How's about this? Yeah, mate, I should have scripted this before I came in. It's not that different. Everybody thinks they're special, so we make you feel special.
Right.
But the differences that define...
You shouldn't have told us that.
It's like, mate, there is a foundation of employment law requirements.
Yeah.
and then you tweak the changes. But this is, and the reason I say it is, I guess in some respects, this is what we're challenging as a norm. This idea that to get an employment agreement template, you need to pay a professional $5,000.
Right.
Mate, they got a template they've been using for the last however many years. They've tweaked as the laws changed. They've copied and pasted your company name with the other one, and they might have added 3 clauses because you have tougher IP requirements than the person who has tougher drug testing requirements. So swapping out 2 clauses, changing the name on the document, writing you a nice email, and then invoicing you for $5,000.
So do you ever walk down the street with your MyHR t-shirt and have an HR consultant stop you in the street? No, do you ever get stopped and people talk to you and
regularly?
Say, what are you doing?
Airport lounges.
What are you doing to my industry?
Yeah. And
are they upset?
Some are, but I'm not anti-lawyer or consultant. This is just a time of change, right? Yeah. And all I'm saying is that the level of automation that you can apply to the human resources and employment law needs of organizations is higher than you think it is, because we have smart machines. So simply producing template agreements and then going, look, anything above that is bespoke, is nonsense. So running a disciplinary, running a restructure, all of these things can be relatively easily automated with some inputs related to the specific situation. There is a place for lawyers and consultants to add value. What I wish for is those lawyers and consultants understanding that, because we've got so much billable hours work we could send their way where our services genuinely stop. So a client phones us and says, look, I've got this issue with someone I think stealing from me and we need to conduct an investigation and discipline. We can run that. You might go, well, that sounds like you need someone sort of serious involved. We can do that for them. Someone who phones us and says, we have a problem where there's a sexual harassment complaint raised and I've got 14 complainants and it's a senior member of our team, we need to escalate that to somebody. A remote service can't do that and we don't need to. A client contacts us and says, I'd like some remuneration benchmarking for my C-suite. We can do that, and we can do that based on some really compelling up-to-date data, which freaks out the REM review consultants. But a client who rings and says, I need to redefine my remuneration strategy. What do I pay? How do I pay it? Where am I going? How does that align to our company growth goals? How do we reward the types of behavior we value? I want to give that to a consultant who's going to go in there and workshop with people. Right. This is where you add value, human-to-human contact. We're not trying to eliminate it and just kind of run this remote robot service. What we're saying is just stop kind of charging $1,000 every time you write a job description for a client, or $2,000 or $5,000 for an IEA, or in the case of Sean, when he ran that redundancy, $5,000 for what I knew was 2 letters and maybe 30 minutes of phone advice. Well, so that's just silly. That's what we're disrupting. You know, you can still add value here. We're not in this kind of takeover, and we partner with some consultants and lawyers who do get that, and they're loving it because they now have no cost of sale because we just feed them work all the time. So have you come across ex-Amazon guy John Olsen? I have, yes. John's a great dude. I did a couple of prezos with him, with I think MYOB or the Ice House, maybe we did. I can't remember. Sorry, in Hamilton and Tauranga and Taupo. You know, really rate him. Whenever I talk to him, the words "people engineer" come to mind. Like he just somehow has got this gift of kind of architecting the kinds of people you need at different stages to really smash it. And so you know, it's that kind of people engineering that can sit on top of also the sticky situations that you know aren't going to work with the automated systems. Exactly. John's awesome. So what's this aha moment where you've got a customer and they just go, oh, I am never going back? What tends to be the moment where they become like loyal? MyHR people forever. So it's typically at the point of an issue, and an issue that is important to them. So this doesn't necessarily mean a gnarly kind of a theft or a harassment or a bullying claim or whatever it is. It might be a restructure. It might just simply be getting a decent employment agreement in front of a key new hire. And that person is kind of coming with a list of terms because they know they're in demand and they can kind of demand a few things. So it's when there is this sort of pointy business critical issue and they engage and they get the seamless sort of reply. So they get the documentation, because this is the other thing we do that's quite unique, is we give our clients the documents in a finished state. We're not a template provider. We're not a generic call center. You phone and say, I need to hire Jason. What you're getting back from us is the offer letter with your logo, the employment agreement, the job description packaged into the software. So we administer the process as well as give you the advice that supports it. And so they understand that, and they get this sort of utilization effect where it's the combined software and human piece. It resolves an issue that was causing them stress. And to go back again, sounding cheesy, but to go back to this tagline, we made it easy. It's one of our values, and it's something that is the basis of everything we do. And they go, heck, that was really easy. And we say, we know, that's what we're here for. And there's this light bulb moment where they go, okay, if I use the software correctly and I keep sort of decent file notes and I make sure I put everything through MyHR and there's history there.
Right.
When I pick up the phone and one of the team pick it up, I can have a chat to Lisa and she's going to go, yeah, we know all about this guy. We can see what's going on and here's what we need to do. And it gets done. And they go, geez, 2 years ago I had a really similar thing and I paid a lawyer 10 grand.
Right.
That's just paid for the next 10 years of MyHR subscription for me. I am sold.
Yeah.
So we retain, we measure, based on SaaS metrics. So our retention target is 95%.
Mm-hmm.
That's total retention, or churn of 5%. And that's total avoidable and non-avoidable. So that includes the businesses that we can't avoid. Avoidable, which is those that leave us voluntarily. They go, no, we don't like you anymore. That's at about 1%. So we very seldom upset people. Okay. Occasionally we do, 1 in 100.
And your acquisition, you have the AA or the UK, the RAC, your
customer acquisition cost,
you break down the side of the road. It's like nothing to sort of join, and then you sort of get on there. Do you have a lot of people joining because there's an issue and they're going, I'll come with you, or they're sort of just onboarding with you anyway before an issue arises? Yeah,
I think pre-COVID we had people who they just wait and they go, heck, now I've got a problem. I need some help. We prefer not to deal with that, because actually you're coming to us in a way that we don't have the history. That's another space where a consultant can add value. So we might say, look, here's the consultant we recommend you use to help you with this problem.
Right.
Then we'll set you up in MyHR to make sure that problem never happens again.
Right.
Post-COVID, people are going, I want to make sure I'm covered in case I run into an issue again, because I've been burnt by this year. So that's reduced, I think, over the last year. And we would rather you come to us. It's the same. Some people will say, well, I've only got 4 staff, but I'm growing and I tend to be in Australia in a couple of years and then China or wherever else. So join now.
Yeah.
Way easier. And because it scales based on headcount, we're not gouging you for this future business of 100 people that you anticipate. You're paying for 4.
Yeah.
And you have this awesome foundation. And as you hit scale, it just rolls and your HR support grows with your business.
Did you take a while to find the price point?
Yeah. God. That's the hardest thing, because there's no benchmark. So there are advantages to.
Are you expensive enough?
Some would say no. Others would say we're too expensive. Right. We've adjusted it, and we are fairly confidently saying we are not touching price again, because we don't want to.
Right.
And we want a commitment. We want our people to know that they're not going to be hit with price increases. But we've just adjusted it. Mate, it took a lot of time to figure that out. And there's a lot to be said for what I call first mover advantage. You've got this sort of open playing field and you can do what you like, but there's some real advantage to having competitors, benchmarkable competitors. You can compare price. You're not making it up. And I often use the Xero and the Rod Drury argument. I apologize to Rod for simplifying the whole thing, but essentially he was able to come out and go, hey everyone, MYOB? And everyone's like, yeah. And they go, everything you hate about it? Yeah. Well, we fixed it and we're cheaper. And it's like, really? Where do I sign? Because he could just take you're a category builder. Yeah. So we want to be
mind you, that's an interesting way of putting it, but they built the category of cloud, didn't they?
Xero did. Yeah, true. And that's what I mean. It was a highly simplified sort of thing. They bought it. They totally built that category, and that enabled us to come. Our early days. You look at the coloring of our website. It was an unashamedly Xero blue.
Yeah.
Because those early days of MyHR, we were still in the process of explaining to people what the cloud was.
Right.
Our first logo was MyHR in a big cloud. It's like the cloud is just kind of the internet. Now you don't have to.
2013, you're still
2013
explaining the cloud.
Explaining what the cloud was.
Scott Gardner says we use them and they're amazing.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, cheers. Scott's awesome. Smart entrepreneur, that man.
Give him a cheers. So you think you're there on the pricing?
Yep.
Ken Brickley last week, CEO of Macroactive, said one of the key things, and I'm gonna ask you to spill some value for people that are building SaaS companies in a second. But he said one of the things that he found really important was to let some fires burn. You can't be over everything.
Mm-hmm.
And do you resonate with that?
Yeah, I find that really hard. I kind of I don't like that personally. I try to be across everything.
Yeah.
But I think it's sage advice because you just can't, especially as you grow. But and I think Ken is right in terms of just your capacity to deal with the things. The key to that is knowing which ones to let burn and which ones are critical. And it's not always what appears to be the most obvious. Just because it's making the most noise, it may be something you can actually leave and deal with something that doesn't appear to be major, but could potentially undermine a whole lot.
Anything specific?
Mostly people.
Right.
Understanding where your people issues lie, who your performers are, who's
at risk
within
your SaaS business.
Within your SaaS business now. Yep, totally. Like identifying your team, your A team, making sure you've got everyone with you, and knowing where the issues are so you can deal with them in advance of it blowing up.
Are you going to put a marketplace together, do you think, for bolt-on consultants?
Yeah, we have a whole partner strategy that's sort of sitting and waiting. It's probably the least well-formed part of it. And we're a bootstrap startup. So we've been growing rapidly, and patching it together as we go. We raised early. We did do a couple of seed rounds. We got some support from Callahan, thank you, and a bank loan. But we elected not to massively dilute and chuck a big chunk of money at it because we knew we would have to reinvent a few times. We didn't really want to massively scale in those first couple of years because we may not have been able to deliver. Right. So we wanted to make sure our growth was staged in a way that tested our model until we knew, and now we know, and now we're ready to scale.
Because everything that you got thrown, it's almost like the COVID experience sort of was like 5 years into the future. If you get slammed, this is what it's going to be like. Mm-hmm. Like it was a stress test, wasn't it? The ultimate kind of stress test.
The ultimate stress test. Yeah.
What do they call it when the banks do is it a stress test? I can't remember.
I'm not sure.
Anyway,
Sorry, I've lost track again of the question, but that's that sort of growth trajectory. The way we framed those 15 years was based on that idea that we kind of had nothing. We had an idea and it needed to be tested. So year 1 to 5 was growth. So that's right, the partner strategy. And so as a result, instead of kind of getting a couple of mil or 5 or 10 or whatever in the bank and going, we hire a partner manager, a customer success manager, 50 devs, 20 BDMs, that works for some businesses.
Yeah.
We really didn't feel it would for us because hockey stick growth in a hybrid software and service model where you're still working out your internal processes could be disastrous.
Yeah.
So we would rather do what we did, which was deliver a high standard of service to a smaller number of customers, because then you get people like Scott who advocate for you because he's been with us for years and he sees the value.
It sounds like sort of the ultimate disaster movie, doesn't it? The HR SaaS gets 20 million and kind of goes pop.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. Yeah. Okay, cool. And so any advice or sort of things that you feel like you've accumulated along the way, knowledge or experience that you feel be helpful for people?
Yeah, the key one I see, especially in this world of SaaS, as I said to you earlier, we sometimes feel like a bit of an imposter because we're not pure software, but I think we're SaaS.
You are.
Thank you.
You are SaaS.
Yeah. Is the first thing is actually find a problem that you can solve. I do often see startups that are these solutions looking for problems. And I'm going, have you actually identified a market need here? This idea of product market fit or whatever it is, But are you just kind of running around trying to find a SaaS business because you've heard about it and you want to be the next Zuckerberg or whomever?
Yeah.
Or have you actually identified a problem people have? So I think that's the first thing. And once we'd identified what the problem was we were solving, it made life way easier. The next thing is then work out how you articulate that. So the amount of times I meet new startups and they explain what they're doing and I have to get them to repeat it sort of 3 different ways before I can figure out what this thing does.
Yeah.
It's like, man, if it's that hard to explain, how do you kind of market that to people? So a clearly articulated outcome, purpose, value proposition.
Yeah, I think that one of the strengths of your story is this whole this idea that very few people have seen the inside of a scaled HR department, let alone worked in it for a long time, let alone found the strengths and the weaknesses of it. And that perspective is gold. And then you take that perspective and you go, I'm going to figure out how to deliver this to a different audience. I think a lot of the great SaaS businesses that I know have had that kind of a unique view, that it's like slightly privileged view that 99% of people never get to see that problem area as intimately.
Yep.
So
Xero founders did. I think Diligent founders did.
Yeah.
It's definitely it. And then the trick for us, which both Xero and Diligent did well, and now we need to, is that this is that secret sauce that I have. We need to work out how to systemize that, bottle it, and then extract me from it. And that's the beauty of a software platform, because that's where SaaS just is the best business model. I think it's fantastic, and it's taking all of that knowledge that I have and those, I guess, secrets that I hold, having witnessed the way things work when they work well and when they work badly, and all that trial and error that I've done without actually having to go through multiple startups and then bottling that and delivering an HR service from that.
But you must have covered, do you feel like you've covered 90% of the edge cases in terms of
probably? We've got some pretty cool work stories. The problem is we can't share them because
cool war stories.
There's
company ABC,
exactly.
Employee XYZ.
Some are very funny, some are very tragic, and we make a point of talking internally about them and helping everyone sort of decompress and debrief. But maybe one day, once I eventually leave my HR and then wait 7 years, I might be able to start publishing some.
But also you have. But what I was meaning more was just that you've covered so much ground in this time.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that's going to come out of left field when you go to UK, or like, it's just you've got the landscape covered, haven't you?
100%. Yeah, and that's the great thing about, I think, our steady growth play over the last 8 years. You look at the big things that happen that shake everything up are law change and events. So COVID, we've come through, and then law change we live through every year. A big one coming for New Zealand is fair pay agreements, but because we operate in Australia and know it well, we understand the modern award structure really well. Right. So we shrug our shoulders and go, okay, let's roll this into New Zealand. Whereas other Kiwi-based companies are trying to catch up at this point. Go, what the heck does this mean? How do I apply this sort of industry-based standards to my multiple clients? And one of my clients has 5 awards that are applicable to them. We have that knowledge in advance of it arriving here, if they arrive here.
Cool. Anything else you want to touch on before we?
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive. Hope it was useful. Thanks for wanting to have a chat, and thanks to the audience. I apologize if I upset anybody. That wasn't the intention.
Just all your clients. No. Thanks a lot, Jason. It was a fantastic debrief on MyHR. And, you can just tell that it's just going to go and go and go and go. It's unstoppable now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, watch out.
And I like the way you kind of talk about the things that you've got going on, because you've got this sort of surety that there's a secret sauce about how you're doing everything. It might look simple if someone looks at the website, but they don't really know half of what's under the hood by looking at the website. Correct. Mike Carden said that the other day. I was like, hey, Mike, for those that don't know Mike Carden, he was one of the co-founders of Sonar 6 HR software, and on the board of Ask Nicely, ProMap, companies like that. Now runs a company called Joyous. And I give that a plug. Joyous is a very cool engagement
pulse survey app. Recommend you get it, folks. And I said to Mike, where are our competitors, our direct competitors, not the ones that are nibbling around the edges? He goes, Jason, no one's figured out how to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Big words.
Mm-hmm.
He would know.
He would, yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.